Hey everyone, welcome to Two Car Pros. My name is Ryan, and today I'm going to show you exactly how to replace a wheel hub assembly for a 2014 Ram 1500. This is the four-wheel drive model. Two-wheel drive ones are going to look a little bit different. The process is the same. It's actually a little bit easier because you don't have to deal with CV axle, but this is for a four-wheel drive truck, so it's something to keep in mind. This is a little tricky, but once you know a couple of tips and tricks that I show you in the video, it's very doable. Mechanic's most likely going to charge you anywhere from $300 to $500 to do this job. Per side, and both sides are exactly the same. I showed how to do the passenger side, but it also applies to the driver's side. And typically when you do a hub, the other hub is right behind it in failing. So when I do hubs, I always recommend you do both sides for that exact reason. With all that out of the way, let's jump in. So in order to get the hub off, we are going to need to take the brakes off. In order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the wheel to a more workable position for us. Makes it a little easier. So on the back side of the caliper, we need to remove this bolt and this bolt to remove the caliper. So it's a 13 millimeter, and we'll just remove those. And a lot of the time, the middle bit will just kind of spin and you won't actually loosen anything. You can go ahead and hold on to this with a pair of channel locks. Ideally, you could get a wrench in there, but it's often too small. Luckily, these just came out really easily, so that's nice. There we go. Now we can take our brake caliper and just kind of walk it off. Sometimes you need to push on it from the backside to recess the pistons a little bit. Sometimes you need to get a big standard screwdriver and just kind of push back on the pistons inside the caliper, just a little bit, not like a lot. There's a little bit of residual pressure holding it in. There we go. Now we're just going to store that like this for right now, but eventually I'm going to zip tie it to either the spindle or the spring. You know what? I'm going to zip tie it to the upper control arm. That sounds good. And what this is going to do is keep our caliper up and out of the way, and it won't hang by the brake line, which you don't want because you can damage it, and obviously you don't want your brake lines to be damaged. Just have it kind of hang out like that. That's perfectly good. And before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and place a lug nut at least somewhat of the way on, just so I remove the caliper mounting bracket, it doesn't just fall off and find my toe. And then we need to remove these two 21 millimeter bolts that hold the caliper mounting bracket onto the spindle. Ugh. These are usually on pretty good. You might need a breaker bar. I got lucky. Ugh. And they're not on too badly, but I've seen these be on like super tight, so just something to look out for. With those two bolts removed, we can remove our caliper mounting bracket, and you can see that my rotor wanted to walk itself off there. That's why I put that lug nut there. So then, while holding the rotor and removing this lug nut, we can remove our brake rotor. So on the CV nut itself, we're going to hose that down with some WD-40 or other penetrating fluid. Just kind of let it hang out for a while. In order to remove that nut, you are going to need a 36 millimeter socket and a very long pry bar, maybe even a helper, because they're going to hold the hub like this while you loosen it up. I'm going to try to do it myself here. Make sure you have a good purchase on the nut. It's not just going to fall off. And we can just try to get that undone. Oh, okay. So I got that undone myself. Wasn't too bad. Rest the way off with my impact implement. So the next thing we have to do is either separate the ball joint or remove the two bolts from the upper control arm to actuate the spindle enough of the way out of the way to get the CV axle out. There's really no other way of doing it. If you feel more comfortable busting open the ball joint, go ahead and do that. But I'm just going to remove these 18 millimeter bolts. There we go. And then be careful when you remove this one because it can all fall on you. And then we can just kind of pull that towards ourselves here. Straighten out our assembly here. We should be able to kind of force that CV axle out of there. You don't have to take the CV axle all the way out, but enough of the way like this, because there's bolts right about where the end of my pointer finger is. So on the back side of the hub where the CV axle actually goes into the hub assembly, there are 3 bolts holding it in. One right there, one on the other side, and one down below in a triangle shape. I'm going to show you how to remove one. They're an 18 millimeter They are a little tricky to show, so I'm just going to show that one. Hopefully understand why. It is very tricky to get to, and I promise you, the bolts look exactly the same. There's no trick or anything. There we go. Remove all 3 of those. So here's our old hub. Notice I've also unplugged the ABS wheel reluctor, and there's just the safety you pull out and then depress and pull out. It's very, very easy. That's why I didn't show on camera. I'm sure you can figure it out. So this is our stock hub. I'm pretty sure this is the stock one that came on this truck from factory. And we can look on the back side to see all of this grease that is seeped out. See this? This is typically indicative of a hub that is done because all the seals and all of everything that makes it rotate like this is gone. So all of the grease and all of the lubricity that brings is completely gone, and you might not be able to feel any wear. Like I rotate like this and it kind of seems okay. That's normal too, because think about it, the weight of a truck is not on it. So that can be a big problem. And you will know that your hub is out because you'll hear and feel it. So let's look at our new one. So here is our brand new one made by Moog. As you can see, there is no grease seeping out of the back. It is a very nice unit. There's our 3 bolt holes. This is going to work really well for us, and the link is located down below in the description. And they're not side specific, so there's just one hub. You just order the same one twice if you're doing both sides. So the first thing we're going to put that back is the dust shield. It goes like this. It came off our old hub. Put a bolt there, kind of hold it in place for us. And now we can put our new hub on. Noticing that I have the sensor pointing kind of to the top right. It's going to go right here in this groove. So we can kind of just put this like this and then start the bolt from the back side so it doesn't just fall off on us. And then we can take our wire and just feed it through the dust shield. Like that. There we go. I know this is going to be really tough to see, even tougher to film, but I'm going to go ahead and replace our other 2 bolts, or at least get them started. And then what I'm going to do is go around in a triangle pattern for each bolt on the back side and just bring it down as evenly as you can. Okay, so our bolts have been brought down to touch. They're just snugged down nice and even. That way the hub sort of walks itself onto the spindle nice and even. And I'm just going to tighten them down basically as hard as I can because they're pretty strong and stout bolts and you don't want the hub falling off. The official torque spec is 44 foot-pounds and then an additional 80 degrees. And the reason I'm not doing that is because there's no way my torque wrench that can do degreeing is going to fit in this space. So I'm just going to tighten it pretty stinking tight. I know everyone out there is shocked and appalled that, you know, people don't use exact torque specs, but I gave them to you just in case you want to use them. I think if you just do pretty stinking tight, you're gonna be good. And for all my torque spec lovers out there, I'll go ahead and simulate it for you. Beep, 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 beep. All right, torque to spec. So now what we can do is line up our CV axle, grab the top of our spindle, and just kind of line it up. If it doesn't go into the splines, just try rotating it, and just give it a good jiggle until it lines up. Just like that, looks really good. It's actually sticking out just a little bit from the CV axle. So I'm gonna go ahead and start the nut on that. Only start the nut if you make sure all of the splines inside of here are lined up with the CV axle. The way you can verify that is if you turn this and the CV axle turns, you're probably good to go. I'm just gonna put that on so it can't fall off on me while I'm working. That's really good. And you can kind of just line it back up. And then you can either put your ball joint back together if you remove that, or put these bolts back in for the upper control arm. And now I'm going to bring these bolts down to snugness. I'm not going to do a final tightening yet. Nice. And then the torque spec for both of these bolts is 130 foot-pounds. you don't have a torque wrench, that's fine. Just pretty good, you know, pretty snug. 130 is a decent amount. I call it 2-arm tight, or maybe the upper ends of 1-arm tight, depending how strong you are. There we go. So if your CV axle is lined up correctly, you should be able to just get a prying implement and kind of just draw it to you, just like that. It shouldn't fight you like that much at all. You just want to make sure it's properly seated, and I can see that the spline engagement looks really good. And don't worry, when we tighten this nut down, it'll, trust me, it'll draw it the rest of the way. You just want to make sure the splines are lined up. As the splines aren't lined up and this tries to pull on it, you could damage the hub or CV axle, and you don't want to do that. So I'm going to take our big 36mm socket and bring this down. Looking good. So this next trick is pretty tricky. It's a lot easier if you have someone to help you, but the gist of it is we're going to do the opposite of how we loosened it. We're gonna have a nice big prying implement, and then we're gonna put our torque wrench on, and that's hopefully going to hold against. It's really easy when you have somebody hold it for you. It's like really nice, but I don't have that luxury, so I'm just gonna try to hold it. I'm gonna try to hold this with one hand and torque it with the other, and the torque spec is 184 foot-pounds. There we go. I would describe that as 2-arm tight if you don't have a torque wrench. And then we can replace our brake rotor. Looking good. And I'm going to put our lug nut on, at least one. What this will do too is ensure it from falling off, which is nice, but it also makes it so the rotor sort of stays even with the flange surface, and that way it's easier to put the brake caliper back on. Then we can replace our caliper mounting bracket exactly the same way we took it off, just in reverse. And I've noticed these pads like to get dislodged, so before we put the caliper back on, just make sure that the pads are nice and in their home like this. You might even have to squeeze the pads together as you're putting the caliper on. 21mm socket on the back side. So let's replace our brake caliper. A lot of the times this can get turned around, so make sure that the brake line is nice and neutral and not all wound up. And then we can put on our brake caliper. Sometimes you have to push the slides in a little bit to get it on, or kind of hook that side first. Meanwhile, you need to push the brake caliper, you need to push the brake pads together while you're sliding the caliper over. So you're kind of doing like 3 things at once. There we go. So the key for me was rotating the slide and pushing it in just a little bit, and then it went right on. And then we can use our 13mm socket and snug those down. And don't do all at once, you want to kind of do it evenly. Okay, so that slide is spinning, no problem. Normally you can put like a wrench right in here, but my wrenches are not thin enough to fit into that groove, unfortunately, so I'm just gonna grab it with a pair of channel locks. Trust me, it'd be more than adequate. And just snug that down. There we go. And then we can route our sensor wire here in its factory spot. It's pretty evident where it goes, like that. And this body clip kind of goes into the frame, something like that. And then the connector just hides out right here, and you just push it on. That's it. So that's how to replace a wheel hub assembly for a 14 Ram 1500 4-wheel drive. Like I said at the beginning of the video, it is definitely doable. This is something you could do in your driveway with some jacks and jack stands. It's going to be a little bit challenging, but you're going to be saving probably, to do both hubs, at least $800 if you do this yourself. The hubs themselves were about $80 a piece, so we're into this for maybe like 170, 160 bucks. You do need the tools, but you are saving a lot of money and you get to keep the tools at the end. Kind of makes sense to me. But if you decide that this repair is a little too advanced for you, that's totally understandable. But hey, that's just my opinion. Let me know yours down below in the comments. I'm interested to read them. Thank you so very much for watching. If you found this video helpful or interesting at all, please consider becoming a member down below by clicking that join button. It is a direct way to help the channel out. Not only are you helping the channel out directly, you like what I do here and you want to support that, I will also put your name in the beginning of the video. Barring that, a like, comment, and subscription go a really long way in the video and how YouTube works, and it really helps the channel out as well. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.